Hey guys, I'm Will Brantley, editor of Realtree.com. Today we're going to be discussing 5 types of bow shots every hunter ought to be practicing. So it's almost hunting season. It's kind of late summer as we're filming this, and everybody's starting to practice with their bows a little bit, or hopefully you are. And as you think about bow practice, I mean, I'm certainly guilty of it. Most of my practice is shooting a deer target or a block target at 20 and 30 yards in the backyard. And you always hear about, you need to vary your practice and shoot out of tree stands and shoot from different positions and things. But what are the drills that a bow hunter can do that are actually the most useful in the field? And I've been bow hunting for a long time. Hunted a lot of different critters across the country, and I, really almost regardless of what I'm hunting, I find that a few specific, shooting positions definitely become useful, over and again. And so those are some of the ones that I'm going to run through today. And the bow that I'm gotten here is just a demo bow. It's actually Bill's bow, so I'm not going to draw it on film and risk dry firing it, but I'm definitely going to, I'm going to run through some of the drills and the stances here. But you can see the bow's not rigged up for anything, and so that's why I'm not actually going to be pulling it back. But the first one, before I talk about any other shooting stance, the first shot that I'm going to say that bow hunters ought to be practicing is just shooting with an audience. Shooting with some buddies, going to a 3D shoot, and what that does, shooting a bow is one of those things that the more pressure you put on it, the more your form can fall apart. And what can happen, if you spend all summer shooting at targets in the backyard, that first deer comes under your stand, you've got a rush of adrenaline that that you're not used to. And so what I've always found is that going to some local 3D shoots, shooting with your buddies, putting a friendly wager on the line, that definitely helps with that shooting under pressure. And when I was a kid and first starting to bow hunt, my dad and his buddies would get together pretty much every night in the summers, before season, and they would shoot for quarters. They'd put a quarter, on every arrow and settle up at the end of it. And I was young, I wasn't as good of a shot as they were, but they always encouraged me to jump right in there with them and shoot for quarters. And I would always come away owing them money, and they would always make me pay up. And putting that pressure, on me as a young bow hunter, kind of learning, it always kind of helped me shoot a little better under pressure, I think. And I can't emphasize that enough. Before we get into any of these shooting stances, get out there and shoot with your buddies. Put a little money on the line. Give each other some smack talk where you're at full draw, and have some fun with it. And that's going to help you shoot a little bit better under pressure. So that's one of the 5. But the next one that I'm going to talk about is shooting from a steep angle. And this is something that obviously your tree stand hunters, it's it's going to come into play, but it comes into play anytime that you're hunting out west, mountain country, maybe you're stalking high country mule deer, you might be sheep hunting, whatever it is. Those steep angles up and down, they can be pretty tricky. Not only does it can it impact your shooting form, but it can also impact your ranging. Back in the day, really before people used rangefinders a whole lot, or in the earliest rangefinders, you used angle cut charts to really compensate for the really steep angles, because what you can find is that if the angle is steep enough, a 30-yard shot, because of the effects of gravity, it might only be, you might only aim for it as as like a 25-yard shot. Most modern rangefinders have an angle compensator that helps for that, but the distance to the target is still going to look the same. So it's definitely one of those that get in a high tree stand, get on some peaks if you can, and practice some of those really steeply angled shots. And up in a stand, when you've got a deer that say comes right below you, the thing that a lot of hunters mess up on, they bring their bow to full draw and then they drop their bow arm, and what you're going to find is that can mess up your anchor point. It can mess up a lot of a lot of aspects of your shooting form. What you actually want to do, bring your bow to full draw, try to keep this this shooting form, your shoulder sort of perpendicular, and actually bend at the waist, and that's going to be sure that your anchor point remains the same, that your bow's going to be level, and that's going to help you make that shot. A lot of times dropping your arm, you're actually going to end up shooting over a deer a whole lot of the time with that really steep angle. So that's one that I highly recommend hunters practice. Practice those steeply angled shots, not only at a distance, but also right under a tree stand, because sometimes you'll be surprised on what that arrow is going to do. Another one that hunters from a tree stand should definitely practice is behind the tree on the weak side. Now, I'm a right-handed hunter. I hunt mostly out of lock-on stands, out of climbers and ladder stands, some too. And so, if I've got a deer trail that's coming along through here, or I expect my shot out in here, I'm gonna angle the platform of my tree stand just like this, so that my most natural shot, I'm gonna raise up. My feet are already going to be in the perfect stance. They're going to be about shoulder width apart, and I can turn and I can shoot anywhere around here. But, a lot of times you can also have deer that come in behind you, or maybe a deer is coming in front of you. And this is actually one of my favorite shot opportunities. The deer's coming in front of you, you're letting it get under the tree, and then you actually want to take the shot when the deer is behind the tree. So let's pretend like this stool is the tree, and I'm going to say that I'm facing the deer over here. And he's coming to me, and I'm gonna have my stand kind of angled this way. So as the deer's coming to me, I'm gonna wait, because he's gonna be head on. I'm not gonna have a really good shot when he's head on, and I'm gonna wait until he comes right under my tree stand. And that's actually when you can get away with a surprising amount of movement, because deer don't have eyes in the top of their head. And so that's when you can turn and get against the tree, and you've got your tree trunk right here, and as the deer goes out through there, that's when you can then draw. And so the thing that bow hunters want to practice, it's really just kind of a matter of the physics of everything. You want to be sure that you're cognizant of your safety harness. It's going to be coming down through there. I've usually got mine clipped into a lifeline, but when you go to draw, that harness might be in the way of your bow, and so you might want to move the harness up or down. You want to be sure that it's not going to be in the way of your bow, and then when you draw and you go to shoot, you want to be sure that your bow's limbs are not, and your cams are not going to come in contact with that tree. But what I like to do is I like to draw, I like to get into position, lean out just a little bit, and when that deer is walking away, I'll bleat to stop it, and it will usually quarter just a little bit when you bleat to stop it, and you've got usually a pretty easy quartering away shot. And so that's definitely a bread and butter shot that whitetail hunters want to practice. Learn to use that tree trunk as cover, and but also learn to shoot around it and take into consideration, just sort of make it sort of your pre-shot routine, and that you check your safety harness, you're checking your bow's limbs and cams, and just making sure nothing is in the way, nothing's going to hit. I've unfortunately taken shots before and had my cam hit the tree, and it's not pretty, and you never get the deer. So another good shot that tree stand hunters need to practice, and this is one that's and it's useful for ground blind hunters too. It's actually really useful for turkey hunters sitting on the ground as well. It's super uncomfortable, but it can be useful, is actually drawing the bow from right between your knees. And this is one of those that probably make an archery coach flip out, because it's definitely not a natural way of shooting. But from a tactical hunting standpoint, what this allows you to do is you can get that bow drawn and use your knees to conceal the motion. And what happens a lot of times, a deer gets in really close, it's feeding around, it's alert, and you may not always have the cover or the time to get drawn on that deer. And so when it puts its head down, you need to get the bow back with as little motion as possible. And so hooking up, drawing between your knees and getting kind of anchored up and being sure that everything's good, and then you can raise up and take the shot. And that's another one, if turkey hunters are sitting flat on the ground, sometimes being able to draw straight back like that, or even if you're sitting in a ground blind, on a stool, sometimes you can't always get turned to shoot over the side. You might have to draw like that and shoot from between your knees. Now, the thing that I would caution you about is it's going to put, because your body is turned like this, it's going to put a lot more strain on your bow arm than the proper shooting form. And so you're not going to be able to hold for as long. You're probably not going to be able to hold for as steady. And so it's one of those things, if I'm going to take that shot, it's because a critter is really close and the emphasis is getting drawn without it spotting me, but I'm also going to take that shot pretty quickly. So, it's only going to be one of those things I'm looking for the 15 to 20 yard shot opportunities. But that is a shooting position that has helped me out quite a few times over the years. And it's another good reason, or it's one of the reasons why personally I opt for a lighter draw weight bow. I shoot a 60-pound bow. I've hunted with 50-pound bows. With today's technology, I mean, any of those bows that's more than enough for for any sort of whitetail hunting. And I like that because what it does allow me to draw my bow from just about any position. With that one being one of the top ones to draw like that. And so with that with that low draw weight, it just helps you get that bow back when things aren't really comfortable. And sometimes that can be the difference in getting a shot or not. The last one is learning to shoot from your knees. And obviously, if you're hunting out west, if you're doing spot and stalk, when you say you're coming up over a hill, you've got a bedded mule deer, and you can see his rack there, and you're crawling up, and you raise up and you range. Coming up to shoot from your knees, I mean, it's really, for a Western bow hunter, it's probably the bread and butter shooting position. Elk hunting, a lot of times you're standing against the tree, but sometimes it can be useful there too. What it does simply is, it allows you to get a lower profile. It allows you to stay below a hill for a maximum amount of time, and it also, you can draw your bow using that cover, and then you can raise up and have that shot. It's one of those things. It's helped me out a lot of times in the whitetail woods too. Every now and then I do still hunt off the ground with a bow. A couple of years ago, I was putting a climbing stand on a tree, and it kind of sounded like a buck's antlers scraping against a tree. And sure enough, I rattled in a pretty nice buck with the sounds of my climbing stand. And I had my bow on the ground there next to me. I was able to pick it up, and doing just like that, he came in and I raised up and I shot him and killed him. And being able to shoot like that on your knees, it gives you a lot of flexibility, and it's also next to standing flat-footed, it's about the most stable shooting position a bow hunter can get into. So basically what you want to do is just think of your knees as your boots. If you're a right-handed shooter, your left knee goes there, your right knee goes there, and your shooting form is just the same as it would be. You're in that perfect shooting position. You can draw, you can get steady, and it's one of the if I can be in that position to take a shot in the field, really almost regardless of what I'm hunting, that's where I like to be. So definitely one to practice in the yard. That one's probably the easiest of all of these, but probably the most important too. So there you go, five shooting stances bow hunters need to practice for this fall, and practice those. I promise you'll have more success.